Everybody, welcome to Carrow Road. Hopefully you can hear me over the lawnmowers, hence why this is a little bit closer than usual. I can't seem to get my microphone working, so there you go. Maybe that's a metaphor for this afternoon, as to how this afternoon has panned out. But it has finished Norwich City 0, Rotherham United 0 here at Carrow Road. You can't help but feel that it's somewhat of a missed opportunity for the Canaries, who, had they have scored this afternoon, would have gone up to 5th in the Championship table, and instead find themselves 8th, looking up again at the playoffs. Preston's win at Reading has pushed them down a place, but it's 4 points across this Easter weekend, with obviously 3 at Blackburn and 1 here this afternoon. I think I did predict that in the podcast relatively maybe before the Easter weekend. Not that I take any great joy in that, I can assure you, but this was a frustrating, disappointing afternoon. It feels like this Norwich City team, I felt quite on brand for this Norwich City team, to be honest, but that kind of feeling that there's 1 step forward and 2 back. And now look, in terms of the playoff picture overall, Norwich City haven't really lost ground. Millwall and Blackburn have dropped points again this afternoon. Preston, the only team who have won, really. So in that regard, it doesn't feel like much has changed. If anything, I think Norwich have gained on the teams above them over the last 2 games. But that feeling that it's hard to shift, that has existed all season, that this Norwich group is unable of putting stuff together and putting results together and being unable to rely upon them, that persists after today, where they had so many opportunities, particularly in the first 15 minutes, and were unable to break down what was a dogged, well-structured Rotherham side who are scrapping for their lives at the bottom end of the Championship. So performance-wise, it was okay. I think Norwich really started quite well. They came out of the traps. They created some wonderful opportunities early on. Temubuki had a couple. Josh Vickers saved from Josh Sargent and Marquinhos. And Norwich came out of the traps. They were flying. It felt like really it was going to be a matter of when, not if, they opened the scoring. And from there, if they'd have done that, the game was in their control, in their command. And I think it would have been a relatively routine afternoon. As it was, they faded after that initial burst. Rotherham just began to grow into the game a little bit. They actually had their best opportunity, and probably the best opportunity in the first half, when Jamie Lindsay cut the ball back to Tariq Posso, who just could not get his head over the ball to strike it cleanly. Just caught the kind of underside of the ball and lofted it over the bar. Otherwise, Norwich City really would have been in trouble if that panned out in the way that maybe we feared. But as it was, Norwich then in the second half, I felt the game was a little bit more dead in the second half. Sounds very tinny. That's not good. Let's see if we can get this sorted out. Like I say, my microphone isn't working, which and let's try and come a bit closer, and hopefully you'll tell me if that sounds any better or worse. But we are reliant upon technology, such is life. It should be okay. I'm using just purely my iPhone microphone, which is no different to what I do any other time. So hopefully it doesn't sound tinny, but hopefully you can hear me. But yeah, so the second half transpired. Norwich City did lots of huffing and puffing. Were probably unable to really capture the opening 15 minutes and that performance that they were able to capture in the opening 15 minutes. They were unable to reproduce that across the game, and that is probably why there's this frustration, because actually they had the opportunities and they worked the opportunities in the first half to ensure that this game, or to put themselves in a position to win this game, and obviously we're left feeling frustrated because they didn't do that. In fairness to Rotherham, they came with a game plan. They came here to play with a point. They completed that game plan and completed it really well. I felt they were structured, they were organised, they limited Norwich City, particularly in the second half, but they were quite hard to break down. I think what we've seen from Norwich City, and this probably underpins their struggles at home, is they really struggle when faced with when they're basically put in command of games and they have to go and break a team down and score goals and be the team with the initiative. They much prefer playing on the counter-attack. They much prefer having space to run into and exploit. And that was the case again this afternoon, where it just felt, again, at points a little bit flat after that opening 15 minutes, and they were unable to really conjure up this type of quality that maybe we would have hoped to have seen after what was a really promising result on Friday. And actually, I think if you'd have flipped the results around, and if they'd have got a point at Ewood Park and won today, I think many people perhaps would view it differently, and perhaps I would view it differently. But with the opportunity that presented itself, it does feel somewhat frustrating. And it also puts a lot of pressure on the Middlesbrough game on Friday night, right? Because Norwich City, if they win that, have a massive opportunity to capitalise and get ahead of obviously their championship competitors. If they lose that and teams around them win, it becomes very difficult again with what would then be 4 games left of the season to make up, let's say, a 4-point gap, a 5-point gap. So that is probably why this in the end feels like an opportunity lost, because they could have pushed themselves into the top 6. They could have put it into their own hands, particularly with Millwall getting beaten at Hull, and they just couldn't find that breakthrough. Christoph Solis had 2 opportunities, one cleared off the line from Wes Harding, another one which he blazed over after Josh Sargent flicked a header goalwards. But in truth, Norwich City just lacked that spark. They lacked that quality in their final action, and that sadly has probably been a characteristic of their play all too often this season. And so that's kind of where we are, frustrated, underwhelmed and disappointed. And of course you have to put it in the context that Norwich City have lots of injuries. I didn't feel that was necessarily noticeable with the way that they played today, particularly defensively. I thought Jakob Sørensen did very well. Sam McCallum had an excellent game, although had to be withdrawn through cramp in the second half, but that's as good as we've seen him play, I would say, and really unlucky with an excellent volley caught well from a clearance from a corner, but Harding did well enough just to get his thigh to it to kind of deflect it wide at a point where Norwich were really on top and really piling on pressure, and that was the case. It felt like if any team was going to win this, it was going to be Norwich City, but obviously Josh Vickers did well in terms of making some really good saves. Rotherham defended well, and also there was some poor finishing from Norwich as well. And all of those aspects probably add to what is the feeling that they've dropped 2 points here tonight. And in the position that they're in, it felt like they couldn't really afford to do that, particularly with the home games. And I said maybe before the Sheffield United game, maybe after, but particularly after the Sheffield United game, that they would probably have to win their remaining home games, Rotherham, QPR, Swansea and Blackpool. They've ultimately lost one and drawn one of their opening 2 back, and obviously one at Blackburn. 4 points from 3 games. I think they probably need to win 4 from 5 to absolutely guarantee their place in the playoffs, and that would probably include a win at Middlesbrough, if we're being completely honest. And that is probably where it begins to maybe feel a little bit difficult, particularly when you look at this Norwich team and that inconsistency that we've seen throughout this season, that characteristic that they've embodied and that they've kind of struggled and wrestled with all season, has been difficult to shake off and been difficult to emerge from. And that is why it feels, and why I have come to the conclusion, as I've said on here many times, that I feel Norwich City will fall just short because of days like today, because of performances like today, where they're just unable to back stuff up. They didn't do it after Millwall. They haven't done it after today. In what was a massive opportunity. In terms of the injuries, Grant Hanley, David Wagner has confirmed will undergo surgery on his Achilles on Tuesday, but that's a season ender. Ben Gibson out to 4 to 6 weeks for a hamstring injury. That's a season ender. So this is Norwich City's group. This is what they have now for the remainder of the campaign. Like I said, I thought Jakob Sørensen was fine alongside Andrew Amadelli. That partnership looked okay, looked steady, although we've got to be honest, wasn't tested too much by Rotherham, although Jordan Hugill did a couple of nice bits with hold-up play and enjoyed kind of the physical battle of it. But in terms of chance creation, they didn't really have too much to defend. I think Rotherham had a couple of shots on target, one of which came late on from Coventry, which was a late strike deflected from a corner, and then a Lindsay header as well. So they didn't threaten in the way that perhaps Middlesbrough will on Friday, and perhaps that's a greater test for Norwich City's back four and where they currently stand. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting because they've made up ground across the weekend, but we probably feel like they have they made up enough is probably the question. That's probably the point, I suppose, that everyone will be leaving Carrow Road with and having at this moment in time. Time will tell. 5 games left. Obviously, we're at Middlesbrough next Friday. That's going to be a massive game for Norwich City's season and obviously their playoff credentials. A win there probably changes everything and changes. Well, it would put Norwich in the top 6 for a start because they're going to have a run on their championship rivals. But it would also probably change the mood heading into the final 4 games, 3 of which feel quite winnable. So, yeah, interesting. And Blackburn have a really hard run in as well. That's worth mentioning. And Preston play Millwall on Saturday as well. So at least one of them is going to lose points. Intriguing times. But ultimately, a goalless draw here probably doesn't feel like quite enough given the time of the season and where we are at this moment. Probably one to file under one of those days. Norwich have played better. They played worse. Rotherham will be chuffed for a point. We saw that they're pretty much guaranteed survival, I would say, from here. which is a wonderful achievement for them. It's got to be said, given they threw a lot of resource at it in January. They're a good side. They're competitive. They play some nice stuff actually at times. They're not as direct as they were under Paul Warne, but effective. Fosu's an excellent player on the left-hand side. Bene caused problems, but Norwich felt comfortable during the game, and that's probably where the frustration comes. Plenty more analysis and reaction on pinkun.com and the Pinkun Plus app across this evening. I hope you have enjoyed your Easter weekend, and I look forward to seeing some of you at Middlesbrough on Friday. It's very on brand for Norwich City, this, isn't it? Very on brand indeed for this season. But what was it? 5 games to go, plenty more points to play for, and obviously 2 playoff spots. It feels like to nail down. Let's hope Norwich City can do enough in the remaining matches. Thank you very much for watching.